The high school in the name of Chong High School for Girls has gained a lot of fame. In this school, not only good education but also graceful girls, ordinary people, see this school as a paradise. In the past year, the rules of Chong School have changed drastically to enroll boys. At the same time, boys remain protected by girls after enrollment. Because of this, the students were lowered in many ways. As a result, the suffering of the boys spread very much at once. After that, the institution became a paradise for girls and hell for boys. A poor teenage boy is transferred to Chong School. His future fate is uncertain. A new educational institution can be a hell and torment for a boy. It may even be that for a newcomer, the school will be a complete paradise. In the city of Changnan, the protagonist and his friend were catching up with a kidnapper. Feng Qin, with all his might, ran beside him was his comrade named Hong Kai Yang. A panting, tired Hong Kai asked his friend where the kidnapper had gone. Feng replied that the kidnapper had fled into the alley. He suggested that his friend wait for 2 more men. Hong Kai was completely confident in his abilities. He said he could handle it on his own. The protagonist told his friend not to overestimate himself. The kidnapper may have a weapon. The kidnapper reached a dead end. Feng asked him where he was going next. The thief turned around on the spot and looked closely at the protagonist. The intruder's name was Lauren Jia. He was the chief guardian of the oblivious love family. To distract his pursuers, Lauren decided to perform his dance against the wall. The protagonist shouted to him that he would show him what a real aristocrat looks like. Hun Kai got angry. He punched the intruder in the face and yelled that he'd had enough of this shit. After that, the protagonist along with Hong Kai started beating up Lauren Jia. After that, Hong Kai told Feng that his new clothes got dirty. The protagonist offered to find 2 more. As the 2 of them walked down the street, Feng noticed someone hiding around a corner nearby. The guy noticed a girl standing around the corner. He thought to himself that she was busted. Hong Kai and Feng were walking further down the street. They saw a girl shaking with fear around the corner. Suddenly, a girl jumped out in front of the guys and asked the protagonist if Lao Yang was finished. She said he was fast. The girl's name was Fan Jiashu. She told the guys that it was getting faster and faster. The protagonist told the girl that they had found 1 kidnapper and the other had run away. Feng asked the girl where she was. She replied that she hid to look at Bobbin's heroic posture. Feng asked her where Xinxuan was. The girl said she was flirting with someone. The protagonist wondered. He imagined how a girl might flirt. She would first look at some guy with great attention. The excited girl points at the guy and yells that it's him. The guy at this time is standing and chatting with a schoolgirl with red hair. The disheveled guy tells the girl not to worry as his chillers will soon return her bag. In Xinxuan's eyes, a guy walks up to her and offers her something to drink. The protagonist and his friend stare at what is happening for a very long time with bewilderment. Feng shouts to the guy loudly as he dares to see a fish in troubled waters. After all this, the protagonist beats up the guy along with Hunan. The red-haired schoolgirl was very excited. The guy returned her bag and asked her what her name was. The girl timidly said that her name was Han Yu Jing and she was from Chengnan School. Afterwards, the schoolgirl thanks the guy for returning her bag. She offers to take him out to dinner. The guy replies that she should get home safely. The guy wondered if they would let the girl go so easily and have the opportunity to seduce a rich person. The guy felt like a saint and decided that such a solution would be great. The main character, his friend, and the girl froze. They wouldn't like it. The girl told the guys that she had recorded Fang's act in the form of a poem she offered them to listen to, and the guys didn't like it. After that, the girl started reading her poem. The guys decided it was better to get off. One guy said his house was on fire and he had to go home and put out the fire. Hung Kai yelled that he found out his girlfriend was cheating and he was leaving. The last guy quickly turned around and said he was leaving too. Next to the girl, only the protagonist was left completely alone. The girl hugged Fang and said that only he could appreciate her gift. The protagonist slyly said that at this point he had a sudden phone call to him. Fang looked at the phone. His mother was calling him. He picked up the phone. The mother told her son to come back quickly because something had happened. The girl was on edge. The guy apologized and said he really needed to leave. The girl wanted to keep him. After that, the main character at all speeds began to run away on the way he said goodbye to the girl. The girl was very upset. She thought sadly to herself that Feng is very stupid. There are 4 people in the main character's family. He has parents and a younger sister. Their family is not very rich, but their life is peaceful and happy. The protagonist was running at full speed. He wanted to get home as soon as possible. Feng entered the apartment and told his excited parents that he was back. The main character was standing at home in front of his parents. He asked them what was wrong. The guy was informed that after he turned 18 years old, it was past time for him to take care of his mother and sister. The protagonist was unpleasantly surprised. Feng experienced a whole gamut of feelings from the usual sadness to utter disappointment. The guy hugged his father and told him not to lose heart as medicine can cure any kind of cancer. The father roughly shoved and hit his son and said he was in normal health. The man looked at his son with judgment. He didn't understand why he started telling him about the treatment. The father told the rudely surprised kid that no one here has cancer. Feng realized that his father was completely healthy and wondered why he wanted to take care of his sister and mother. The mother told the son that his father had taken out a 10 yuan loan 10 years ago, and he now owed the bank 1,000,000 yuan. The son was surprised at such bank interest. His father told his son that he would be looking for work in the Middle East, so in his absence Feng would take care of his mother and sister. The son excitedly shouted to his father that he wasn't coming back alive. That said, there's always a way out about money. The father liked his son's answer. He realized that he could leave in peace. The father rejoiced as he realized that his son would take care of his mother and sister. Afterward, the father happily patted his son on the shoulder and said that he was really responsible. The protagonist has a bad feeling and realizes that something bad is waiting for him. Mother told Feng very cheerfully that he could do something too. The guy asked his parents what he could definitely do, and he said he would try. The father told his son to go to Chungnan Girls' School next quarter. The son agreed and said he would study. After that, he thought about it. Completely shocked, the protagonist realized that he would be attending an all-girls school. The main character forced himself to calm down. He asked his mom if his attendance at a girls' school could affect his debt. The mother replied to her son that if he did well in school, he would get a bonus to pay off the debt. His father told his son that if he started studying at the girls' school now, Lan could transfer and study there for free. Mother added that Feng's study would help everyone get out of debt and give Lan a good education. The woman thought that her son would become a headmaster and marry a rich girl. Feng thought to himself that Lan would also be able to study at the girls' school, and the tuition was normal. His father told his son that he and his mother were not forcing him, but that he would go to work anyway. The mother gave a surprised look and immediately sharply called out Feng's father. The main character decided not to resist anymore and told his parents that he would just do it. The father excitedly said that he always knew his son was smart. The whole family hopes for Feng. The father then told his son that the headmistress wanted to see him tomorrow. Feng didn't understand how his father knew ahead of time that he would agree to study. Afterward, the father told the protagonist to take his suitcase with him. Feng walked sadly through the house. He thought to himself that he was being evicted from the house. The kid walked into the room. He noticed that his parents had really packed his suitcase. The protagonist sat down on the couch and turned on the light. He needed to think. Feng decided to sit and reflect on the fact that he would have to attend a girls' school. The protagonist remembered how 5 months ago he happened to pass by a girls' school. It was raining very hard. Feng was walking all alone on the sidewalk. The main character was bored. He walked slowly and yawned under the umbrella. Just then, Feng noticed some guy on the school grounds outside the fence asking for his help. After that, a red-haired schoolgirl ran up to the guy and hit him. Afterward, the protagonist noticed a red-haired schoolgirl carrying a lifeless boy behind her. Feng was very much frightened by what he saw. He mistook the schoolgirl for an evil spirit. 4 months ago, the guy was passing by the girls' school again. Feng confidently paced completely alone on the sidewalk and thought to himself. The main character was bored. He was walking, yawning, and not paying attention to anything. Feng heard some guy behind the bars asking him to open the door. The protagonist was surprised that this had happened to him again. Then a girl attacked the guy behind the fence and killed him. She said he couldn't leave after he contacted the president. Feng realized it was another victim. On a clear and rainy day 3 months ago, the protagonist was taking a quiet walk. As before, he walked confidently, slow and lonely along the city sidewalk. Feng was very bored. He yawned and paid no attention to anything. The main character noticed some guy wanted to climb over the fence wall. He yelled that he was almost out. After that, someone threw a rope on the guy from behind and threw him off the fence. Feng noticed the guy lying dead on the ground with blood all around him. The main character got scared. He thought the devil killed the guy. Fen now knew that he would have to study for a whole year in that scary school. He decided to tell Lan about it. The protagonist walked to the door behind which was his little sister's room. Fen knocked gently on the door and told his sister that he was the one who had come. After that, the girl opened the door. She asked the guy what he was doing here. Feng asked his sister if she knew that they would be attending a girls' school. The girl replied that her parents had already told her. After that, Lan went back to her room. She asked the protagonist not to call her sister at school. Lan said back through the door that she had nothing to talk to the killer about. Feng thought to himself that his sister was still angry about something. He decided to leave. After the protagonist turned around and started to leave, Lan opened the door ajar. The sister watched Feng moving away down the hallway from her room for a very long time. The main character saw zombie schoolgirls running around him. One of them said she was hungry even after 300 boys. The boy, after a long and nightmarish sleep, cried out loudly and woke up. The main character, frightened, sat up on the bed after the nightmare. He was having to catch his breath. Feng thought to himself joyfully and calmly that it was just a dream. The protagonist wiped the sweat off his face here. He felt he was scared. One of the parents knocked on the door and told Fen that he had to go to meet the principal. The main character stood up and said humbly that he understood everything. He was getting ready to go to school. Fen walked up to the gate of the girls' school. He felt like all the guards around were looking at him. The guy was walking through the school grounds. He thought all the guards were laughing at him and wishing him luck. Then one of the guards looked at the protagonist and said that he was still very young and he felt sorry for him. The protagonist got angry at the school guards. He didn't realize what they were saying to him. After that, Feng found the floor and office he wanted in the large school. The guy thought that the school had so many floors that if there was an earthquake, they'd all die. The main character walked up to the principal's office and knocked. She told him to come in. After that, Feng opened the door and resolutely walked in. He apologized for disturbing the principal. The guy looked around the office very carefully. He saw a poster on the wall. Then the boy noticed a chair standing in the corner near a bookcase. There was also a fresh green vase in the study near one of the walls. Looking around, the boy said to himself that he saw an extraordinary purity. The principal didn't turn around to the guy, told him they hadn't seen each other in a while. The principal was named Lee Song. She greeted the protagonist cheerfully. The protagonist was a little embarrassed. He said hello and gave his name as Feng Qing. After that, Headmistress Lee walked over to the main character. He was sitting on the sofa. Feng was very much frightened and confused. He sat there silent. Lee came close to the protagonist, who turned to her fearfully. After that, Headmistress Lee gave the main character a gentle and affectionate hug. Principal Lee Song then pressed the newly minted disciple against her chest. The woman told the guy that he had really grown up a lot. The main character was very embarrassed and shy. He didn't realize what was going on. After gathering his thoughts, Feng asked the principal what she wanted from him. The woman asked the protagonist, doesn't he remember how he hit her chest when they saw each other? The guy asked the woman if she was serious. The principal then winked at the guy and said he even called her mom once. Feng thought to himself that he remembered something like that. The woman smilingly told the guy not to worry as she was just testing him. The protagonist shouted irritably that it was not a test. Principal Lee picked up the papers and said they were getting back to business. The woman handed the protagonist some kind of document to study. The protagonist sat down and began to read carefully the document he had received. The principal said she asked the guy to come in to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Feng couldn't understand what the document was. Principal Lee told the protagonist that he must follow the school rules and not reveal the details of the contract. The boy read the contract carefully. He studied successively all the clauses. There were so many different rules and prohibitions at the girls' school. The woman said that it is not allowed to use force on girls or get into relationships. The principal pointed out to the boy that they don't have flirting boys. The protagonist reread the rules. He resented the fact that he wasn't allowed to use force. He didn't want to be a loser who was beaten for no reason. Principal Lee reassured the protagonist that he had legal rights to defend himself. Feng asked the woman why on earth the girls' school needed boys. The woman explained that girls only spend their lives with female students, therefore they have a prejudice against boys. The principal said that last year they had a couple of bad boys. That made the girls hate them even more. This year they want to admit good students to the school. The woman pleaded and told the protagonist that she was counting on him. She asked Feng to do his best to make the students trust him. The principal held the boy by the shoulders to give him more of an impression. At the end of the conversation, the woman told Feng that she hoped he would save her school. The boy replied that he would try. The principal told the protagonist that he could take his things to the dormitory next door. When the guy was already approaching the exit door from the office, the woman decided to remind him of something. The protagonist turned around and asked the woman what she wanted to tell him. The principal told Feng not to go near the old castle because it was a restricted area. The main character was walking on the territory of the school. The main building was in the form of a large castle. The student thought to himself that this school is very big. He came from a small garden. After that, Feng approached the building where the boys from the school were to be housed. The protagonist went into the building. It was empty. He found his room. Feng entered his room. Everything was furnished at the highest level. The furnishings were expensive and solid. After that, the main character decided to clean up a bit in his new place of residence. The guy was tired. He said to himself that it was very tiring to clean this place. After that, the protagonist went to the window and looked out with interest at the street. The student decided to take a little rest and take a walk in the garden at this time. Feng stared mesmerized at the beauty that surrounded him on all sides. In the center of the garden, the guy walked up to the gazebo. He never ceased to be amazed that everything around was beautiful. Fen walked to the edge of the garden and noticed that there was even an artificial lake here as well. Then the protagonist noticed something in the grass that caught his eye. Fen noticed a pile of clothes lying in the grass. He looked closely. The protagonist looked closely and saw a woman's school uniform lying on the grass. The guy noticed a girl swimming in the lake not far from where he was standing. The schoolgirl surfaced out of the water wearing a small white swimsuit. The protagonist froze and did not avert his gaze from the girl. A schoolgirl swam out of the water without noticing that an unfamiliar guy was standing next to her. Just then the student turned around and shamefully screamed she thought she was here by herself. The protagonist was also frightened to be seen and became very embarrassed. The student sat down and asked fearfully to Fen why the guy was here. The guy started making excuses to the schoolgirl. He said that he was just passing by and did not see anything. He apologized to the girl for interfering. The schoolgirl was really pissed off she didn't even hear the words of justification from the guy. The girl grabbed her sword and ran out of the water after the protagonist. As a result, Feng was very much frightened. He briefly even froze in place. The protagonist started to run away from the schoolgirl and said that she should get dressed first. The girl threateningly told him that she would make a chop out of him. That's when the guy got an idea of how he could get away from the girl quickly. Fen turned aside, pointed his finger to the sky, and told the girl that there was a UFO there. For a short while, the schoolgirl was distracted. The boy in the meantime was able to successfully escape. The schoolgirl felt like the heroine of a computer game, and as if her enemy had left this world. The student was disappointed. She wanted to kill the protagonist with her own hands. Fen turned back around to make sure there wasn't a girl running after him. Here, the protagonist thought that it was a pleasant surprise for him after all. The guy decided to distract himself and forget about everything that had just happened to him. Feng decided to go out and meet up with his fellow Xingchuan guys he knew. The protagonist walked up to a restaurant called Lungjung Diners. Inside the restaurant, the guy noticed a few of his acquaintances and they were eating. In the restaurant, the main character met his friend. The guy greeted him and offered to celebrate. A friend grabbed Feng in a hug and decided to take a picture with him as a souvenir. The main character didn't like the photo. A friend promised to make filters. The guy smiled happily at the protagonist after taking the picture. After that, Feng felt annoyed. He developed a dislike for his friend. The student grabbed his friend and whispered angrily to him that he was going to kill him. The friend replied to the protagonist that it's not that bad, and he'll make him suffer too. The guy had already seriously told the protagonist that after a detailed analysis, he could give him 2 pieces of news. Fen told his friend to start him off by telling him the good news. The guy sat the protagonist down at the table and said that the first news is very wonderful. A friend informed the Fen that he had gotten into 1st grade, which is full of high school pretty girls. The protagonist asked a wary friend about the bad news. The guy told the student that all beauties are like roses with thorns. Feng asked him to be clearer. Class number 1 had 300 fighters, but they're all missing. Among all the high school beauty girls, there are 4 main devil girls. The protagonist thought about it and realized that he needed to understand the nature of his future classmates. A friend told the protagonist that girls have over 100 tortures on boys. Feng asked if schoolgirls have no lessons or homework. The protagonist thought about what was ahead of him. He realized that he could only take a risk. It was time for the main character to go to school the next day, and the phone rang. The clock on his phone showed 6 o'clock in the morning. Feng was awakened by the melody of a song. The guy reached up with his hand and disconnected the call. He was getting ready to get up. After a brief pause, the student rose abruptly and sat up on the bed. The main character jumped out of bed and decided it was time for him to get up. A student decided to start his first day of school at an all-girls school. One of the parents knocked on the door and told the kid to get up. He mustn't be late for his first day at his new school. The boy lazily replied through the door to his parents that he knew everything. The student thought to himself that how could his parents have interrupted such a historic moment? Feng decided for sure that he should come to school in a very colorful image. After 10 minutes, the main character changed his hair and appearance. He decided this style was too cool. Feng Qing wore a wig and a brightly colored suit. He expressively put on makeup. As the student approached the school, he felt that because of the wig, he could hardly see anything. The protagonist noticed an expensive race car pulling up to the school gates. Even after that, a gorgeous red race car pulled up to the school. After that, someone brought the schoolgirl in an expensive Mercedes racing car. Eventually, an expensive Porsche race car pulled up to the school. Feng thought the race cars were driven by rich rednecks. He thought someone might have come in a helicopter, as if at the guy's wish. The rumble of helicopter propellers could be heard in the sky. The arrival of the helicopter struck the protagonist. He realized that nothing could be cooler. The student realized that he was living in different worlds with his future classmates. He decided to go over and check in. Near the entrance to the school, he noticed a girl he knew. She was a member of the student council. He thought to himself that she was a bright girl. The disciple decided not to be frightened. He remembered that you can't avoid your enemy. Feng remembered that he had seen this student naked. If she recognized him, he'd be screwed. A student decided he'd better run away near the fence to the school he was going to. He decided he could climb safely over the wall. Fen confidently climbed over the school fence and jumped stealthily onto the lawn. After catching his breath, The protagonist decided that he should find the headman and register. Finding the right office for him, the guy walked up and knocked on the door. The door opened and the main character entered the office. He immediately apologized from the doorstep. The guy went to a receptionist named Tian. He said he was here to register. The woman said that the director had already told her about the guy. The secretary told the protagonist she'd take him to class. Feng obediently walked down the hall. Behind the secretary, he was preparing to meet his new classmates. As the boy himself was walking down the hallway, the students were just talking about him. The protagonist walked over to the sign that said Class Number 1. The secretary told the students that the guy's name was Feng Qing, and he had just transferred to them. There was silence in the classroom. After that, Feng looked around the classroom. He gave his name and said that his hobby was hitting people. The protagonist added that he doesn't like it when people come within half a meter of him. At this time, the female students were saying about the main character that he was very good. Fen thought to himself that the girls in the class weren't that scary at all. The secretary told the protagonist to sit next to Han Ding's girlfriend. The guy immediately thought to himself that it sounded familiar to him. Already quite leisurely, the protagonist walked across the classroom to his seat. Fen sat at his desk and wondered if there was anything else he should do. Then the apprentice decided he had to find all 4 devil girls. The guy looked over and saw a Moya Zhao girl with dark red hair. The student named Wei Wei Tun was cute and beautiful with blue hair. Tong Fei Lu's disciple had very green eyes and light blue hair. The schoolgirl Xiao Shui Nangong had dark blue hair and eyes of the same color. The guy thought to himself that all the girls were incredibly beautiful, and he needed to be careful. The protagonist, sitting at his desk, cautiously turned around and looked away. Fen kindly turned to the student, said hello, and told her that he had seen her somewhere before. The schoolgirl was very much startled and frightened by such words. The girl started screaming fearfully to the protagonist that he was mistaken. After that, the student took a long look at the neighbor on the side. She felt frightened. A school board meeting was then to be held in the school building. All meeting attendees gathered in the school board office. The students were talking amongst themselves about a new guy being transferred in. The girl president of the school board was named Lena Sleep. She said the kid was transferred by his mom. One of the students wondered what kind of guy he might be if he was transferred by the headmistress herself. The schoolgirls were studying a file with information about the main character. One of the students was surprised to see the information about Feng. A friend told a student named Naixian Jiang that she seemed to know a new student. She hurriedly replied that she didn't know Feng. Then the president slyly said that after the guy was transferred to them, they could only hit him. The schoolgirl said the guy could be innocent. The president replied that the new student had been transferred by the principal himself, which could end badly for them. After that, the president has seriously pondered over the students' words. Then the president told the students that the main character in the class is alone. He could be taken care of by 4 devil girls. The schoolgirls were amazed at such words. They told the president that she had done the right thing. Lena Dream then told the schoolgirl contestants that they could all go. One of the students stayed behind. Lena asked her what she wanted to say. The schoolgirl told Lena that she was allergic to alcohol and didn't need to pretend to have wine in her glass in place of grape juice. Lena told the student that she just likes grape juice. The teacher turned to the students and told them to bring new notebooks. After that, the woman asked Fen to help. The guy agreed and thought to himself that why he was being made the center of attention on the first day. The teacher asked Kexen Fan to help the main character. The schoolgirl replied that she wasn't feeling well. After that, the student with red hair said that she would help Fen. The student then got ready to go with the main character with a very downcast look. Feng looked at the schoolgirl and thought that she must be being bullied. The apprentice reminded Han Yu-jing that they had met her a couple days ago. The guy reminded the girl that he had helped her get the bag from the robber. The schoolgirl thanked him and asked him not to talk to her now. Feng agreed. The disciple realized that the other girls might pounce on Han Yu-jing because she was talking to him. Feng decided to get distracted and read the news on his phone. The smartphone reported the destruction of a 1,000-year-old memorial to Buddha. Suddenly, the schoolgirl turned to the main character. He was surprised. At the same time, the student looked around fearfully. The student bowed and said in a frightened voice that she was sorry. The boy couldn't understand what was going on. The schoolgirl told Fen that she didn't want to talk to him on purpose. The boy replied that he was not angry with her and that she should not worry. The guy then suggested to the schoolgirl that they pretend as if they didn't know each other. At this time, one of the devil's disciples told her girlfriends that the main character had prepared. Another schoolgirl said that Feng was like she knew everything ahead of time. She asked that student Xiao Shui tell them about the future. After that, Xiao Shui took the map in her hands to predict the future to the female disciples. Xiao Shui, a schoolgirl, laid out the cards for divination. Her friends eagerly asked her what the cards predicted. Xiao Shui was silent. She looked at the cards with surprise and great thoughtfulness. After a brief pause, the schoolgirl told her girlfriends not to provoke the protagonist. He should live a quiet year. The schoolgirl devils were very much surprised. They had not expected such a prediction. The girlfriends didn't understand what had happened to Shuei. They couldn't believe that they should leave the guy alone. One of the students said they wouldn't do that. If Feng is left alone, it means everything they did last year will be gone. The student suggested that everyone should follow the same pattern, but be more careful. The other girls got excited and said that they would do the same. The schoolgirl with blue hair said dreamily that she wanted to see how unusual the main character was. When the protagonist returned to class, the schoolgirl thanked him for his hard work. Feng replied that he was fine. The schoolgirl handed him a can of drink. The protagonist replied that he would drink a little later. He immediately realized that he had been offered poison. The protagonist decided not to take any risks and hid the bottle with the drink in the shulyadka. The schoolgirl watched carefully what the main character was doing. After that, the student smiled at Fenyu and said that she had to go now. One of the students approached Hanyu Jing and asked her to wash the window instead, and the schoolgirl agreed. The student said tiredly that her lessons were finally over for her. She stretched her arms and prepared to leave. The protagonist thought that it didn't seem at all like the student wasn't feeling well. The main character decided to help a schoolgirl with cleaning. She thanked him for it. Feng told the student to always ask him for help if she needed it. The girl replied calmly and sadly to the guy that she would. The protagonist returned to his room and decided to go to wash up. Suddenly, he ran into an angry schoolgirl with a sword. She decided to kick his ass for last time. The guy happily walked around the room undressing to take a shower sooner rather than later. The student was very much frightened and embarrassed that she could see the guy naked. The schoolgirl yelled at the main character that he was shameless. The boy was frightened and asked if they had to see each other like that every time. Here the protagonist decided not to stand still. He pushed off and ran towards the student. The guy then grabbed the girl and threateningly ordered her not to scream. Dropping the helpless student to the floor, he told the girl to be quiet. The protagonist stared intently at the student. She looked back at him apprehensively. Fen told the girl to be quieter as otherwise the others would hear her. The schoolgirl yelled angrily for him to remove his hands in 3 seconds. After that, the schoolgirl hit the guy in the groin with all her might. The protagonist felt as if his balls had been smashed after the impact. Feng felt a very intense pain from the blow. He couldn't even scream. After the blow, the protagonist collapsed to the floor from severe pain shock. The schoolgirl angrily yelled at the guy that he was a sick pervert and a maniac. Fen was lying on the floor after the hard blow. The schoolgirl kept screaming at him that he was a shameless pervert. The protagonist yelled angrily back to the girl that it was his room. A high school girl told her boyfriend that he peeped on her while she was swimming at the lake. The guy replied that he was just walking in a public place. The student accused the schoolgirl of disrupting public behavior by swimming in the lake. After that, the student got very angry. She didn't even know what to say to the guy. The girl yelled angrily to the guy that she was challenging him to a duel. The guy answered the girl with surprise that the Qin dynasty, when there were duels, has long since ended. The schoolgirl replied to the guy that he had humiliated her twice and would not just leave it at that. Fen told the girl judiciously that they both had time to see each other naked. The protagonist thought that after the kick in the groin of the girl, he would no longer like to look at the girl. The girl turned her head and shouted to the guy to get dressed quickly. Fen pulled on his clothes and told the girl what he would have done so long ago if she hadn't yelled. The schoolgirl told the guy to come to the practice room at midnight. After that, the student turned around with an angry grimace and ran away. The main character was very much surprised. He couldn't understand what was happening. Late at night, a guy was walking through the school grounds. He was looking for the gym. Feng twisted his head carefully and looked around. He wanted to not be late to the training hall. The guy walked up and saw a building with a sign. He figured the training room was here. There was a schoolgirl waiting for him. She was surprised that he came. The boy asked the student what would have happened if he hadn't come. The girl threatened the guy that he'd be buried tomorrow in a Tokyo cemetery. Fen, with boredom in his voice, told the girl that he wanted to go to bed sooner and let her act faster. The schoolgirl said menacingly to the guy that from tomorrow he will be in bed for another month. The guy was not afraid. The girl grabbed the sword in her hands and told the protagonist that he had asked for it himself. The schoolgirl prepared to attack. She assumed a fighting stance and rushed forward. The schoolgirl ran at full speed towards the protagonist holding a sword in her hands. The apprentice began swinging her sword around trying to strike the protagonist. The guy professionally and gracefully cultivated from the blows. Then he rushed towards the student. Feng was able to grab the girl's hands holding the sword with his own. The guy held the girl's hands back very quickly, causing her to no longer be able to use the sword. The protagonist held the girl standing behind her and he breathed out into her ear. The girl was very much frightened and screamed, but she couldn't fight anymore. The guy smiled happily and began to wrest the sword from his student's hand. The schoolgirl couldn't fight anymore. She let the sword out of her hands. After that, the protagonist placed the sword on the floor. The girl sat in front of him. The protagonist said that victory is his. He added that the student should not give him any more trouble. The schoolgirl was upset. She replied to the student that they weren't done yet. Fen told the girl judiciously that if she tried to attack him again, things would be much worse. The student was shocked. She didn't think she was going to lose to a guy like that. The protagonist turned around and started to leave. He shouted to the girl after him to train hard. The student was frustrated and very angry with herself. She gritted her teeth in frustration. The schoolgirl sat there cursing at herself. She decided that she would have to fight the guy again. The protagonist was walking back to his room through the school grounds. Fen opened the door and walked into his apartment. He thought about everything that had happened to him today. Then, already on the couch, the student thought to himself that the new quarter had started very interestingly for him. The guy decided to himself that the schoolgirl would give him more trouble. The student decided that she would win the next time. The protagonist decided to go to bed with a bad feeling. After that, the guy decided that enough of the torment, and it was time for him to go to sleep. The next morning, Fen woke up, got ready, and went to school again. As the boy approached his classroom, he heard a suspicious noise inside. The protagonist stopped. He gingerly opened the door and began to slowly enter. Then the student was very much surprised to see his classroom. In front of Fen, all 4 of his classmate girl devils were standing in front of him and they were smiling at him. As the protagonist thought about it, he realized something was wrong, but he couldn't figure out what it was. Only when he entered the classroom did the boy realize that he had forgotten to eat breakfast. In despair, he collapsed on the table. The protagonist looked at his watch and saw that it was only 10 o'clock in the morning. The student felt hungry and very weak. He had no energy to study. Then after a few lessons, the clock on the wall showed 12 o'clock in the afternoon. The protagonist felt that he was already starving to death. It was lunchtime. The kid got out of school and headed out to get something to eat. Feng walked up to the cafeteria building and there were many female students inside. As he walked through the cafeteria, there was a lot of chatter. The student was very much surprised in the canteen. There was a lot of delicious and good food. Already after that, the guy was walking through the dining room and looking for a place to sit down. Eventually, the protagonist found a cozy table. He decided he would sit here. After Fen sat down at the table, an oppressive silence reigned throughout the dining room. The protagonist was astonished. He couldn't understand why there was a dead silence. Feng was very surprised that everyone was staring at him. Some girl shouted to the guy that he was sitting in her seat. The boy turned around and saw a female student with big green eyes beside him. The main character was pleasantly pleased that he was approached by such a beauty. The student asked the guy if he had finished his lunch. Feng excitedly apologized to the schoolgirl. The student asked the guy to leave and not interfere with her enjoyment of her lunch. The main character conciliatingly said he would leave and sit in another seat. The schoolgirl told the guy that all the seats belong to her. The guy can't sit anywhere. The protagonist got angry with such a response. The schoolgirl did not express any emotion. Here the student walked over and told the schoolgirl calmly that he would just sit there. Feng saw that the girl was looking at him with dislike. He asked if she would kick him out. The student in the canteen wondered how the guy dared to say such words to Choxiao Ye. The schoolgirl thought that the main character was an interesting guy. The guy decided to ignore everything that was going on around him. He needed to finish his lunch quickly and leave. At this time, the schoolgirls at tables among themselves consumed lunch and left. The guy was agitated. He didn't understand why things were happening around him like this. The protagonist looked at the table with a lot of food and felt annoyed. Then the guy noticed that the schoolgirl across from him was about to start lunch. The students then finished their lunch and began to disperse from the dining hall. The main character looked over and noticed that the girl didn't look quite normal and he figured she was in trouble. As the boy walked down the hallway, a red-haired schoolgirl followed him. The girl approached the guy from behind and suddenly touched him with her hand. Fen was very surprised at the touch. He didn't expect this from a schoolgirl. The guy turned around and noticed that the girl had started to run away from him. Feng felt the girl shove some paper in his hand. He thought to himself that the unknown frightened him too. The guy read the paper and noticed there was some number written on it. The protagonist thought he had already decided to himself that the red-haired schoolgirl is a spy. Feng returned to his dormitory. He called the girl Han Yu Jing and asked her why she was being so secretive. The girl said excitedly to the guy that he had caused himself a lot of problems. The protagonist was surprised. Han Yu explained to him that the girl he met in the dining room was Choxiao Ye, and she was from a wealthy family and demanded that the guy apologize to her. The guy was not affected by such threats. He told the girl that everything was fine and that she should rest. The disciple thought of Choxiao Ye that he couldn't be intimidated by some gangster girl. Feng thought to himself that he had nothing to fear. The girl couldn't castrate him. At that time, someone quietly threw a gas canister into the boy's room. The unconscious guy slumped to the floor. The gas had quickly gotten to him. Feng forcelessly continued to lie there, and he couldn't even turn on his side or breathe. The protagonist felt completely killed. He lay as if dead. Then Fen's last thought was that he was completely finished. Through the incomprehensible haze of memories, the protagonist felt a piercing pain. He realized he was awake, but couldn't understand why he couldn't move. Fen heard a voice from afar telling him to wake up. The protagonist opened his eyes a little. He saw the lights on the ceiling. In a barely audible voice, the protagonist asked the people around him who had called him. The student saw a smiling doctor in front of him who greeted him cheerfully. The boy was frightened. The protagonist wanted to break free, but he was securely tied to the bed with straps. The doctor said in a soothing voice that he had been informed that Fen was using force on the girls. The boy asked excitedly who had informed them of this. The doctor replied that there was no time, and they would deal with the student now. Out of fright, the protagonist thought that Chusya Ye might have complained about him. The doctor said that he wants to castrate the protagonist and it will help him to get rid of his problems. The protagonist was very frightened. He shouted at the doctor that he must be joking. Fen began to make an attempt to break free. He yelled for the doctor to stop. The student shouted in fear to the doctor to stop it as soon as possible. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. The doctor was surprised. He didn't know who could dare to disturb him. The medic didn't like why the noise was so annoying. He went to the door. The schoolgirl kicked with all her might at the door. At the same time, she swept the doctor off her feet. The student entered the room. She saw the main character lying tied up on the bed. The schoolgirl asked fearfully at Feng Cheng why he was tied up here. The guy decided to himself that the girl had come to kill him while he was tied up. The student tried to untie the straps, and she was having no luck. Feng was very surprised. The student then grabbed the protagonist's arms and tried to pull him out. Feng yelled at the girl to be careful. He said he had a torso, not a radish. After being released from the restraints, the protagonist sat on the floor and rested. The student looked at the schoolgirl next to him and felt very uncomfortable. After a bit of thought, Feng squeezed out a word of thanks for the girl. She told him it was fine. After calming down a bit, Feng asked the schoolgirl why she came in the first place. The schoolgirl shouted at him that she was careless last time. She threatened that this time she would kill him for sure. The main character was frightened by how persistent the schoolgirl was with him. The schoolgirl pulled out her sword and told the guy to come with her to the training room. The protagonist told the girl tiredly that he wouldn't play with death. After saying those words of his, Feng completely collapsed to the floor exhausted. The guy was lying without being able to get up on the floor, and he was shaking very badly. The main character was covered in sweat and felt very broken and weak. Fen thought to himself that there might be more drugs left in him from the doctor. After that, the protagonist felt a very strong tension in his body. Lying on the floor, Fen asked the girl if she really wanted to hit him in this state. It would be disrespectful to the fight. The schoolgirl excitedly asked the guy if he was okay. The boy got to his feet. He said he was fine and ready to die by the sword in battle. The girl banged her sword on the floor and said that noble men don't fish in waters that aren't calm. A little embarrassed, the student told the guy to go to the nurse's office if he felt unwell, and then she left. The student continued to worry about the guy's condition. She couldn't understand also what kind of fat doctor was near the protagonist. Feng thought happily to himself that he was a genius since he was able to escape. The guy remembered the girl and decided to himself that she was very nice. At that time the phone rang. The guy noticed that the headmistress was calling him. Feng asked Miss Song why she was calling him, and if something was wrong. The woman asked the guy if she could call him if she had nothing. The guy asked the principal in return if he could call her if he didn't have anything. Principal Song said in response that she would not be ceremonious then. After the conversation, it took the protagonist a long time to realize what the woman was talking about and what he had agreed to. The boy decided to call the principal back. At that time, there was a knock on his room. The main character got out of bed and went to the door to open it. The knocking continued. The guy stood at the door and listened intently. The protagonist heard nothing interesting and decided to open the door. The door opened, and from behind it, Headmistress Song entered the room abruptly. The guy was very much surprised by the woman saying hello to him. Feng asked the principal what she was doing here. Miss Song told the guy that she came to see him on purpose. The main character asked the woman if she had an assignment for him. The principal said she had a very difficult task for the guy. Fen yelled that he was refusing. The woman then walked across the room and sat on the couch in silence. The principal said that their school is going on a field trip, and the student Tong Fei Lu refuses to go. She asked the protagonist to change the student's mind. Feng replied unequivocally that he refuses. The guy remembered that the schoolgirl didn't hit him last time, so she wouldn't listen to him. The woman was thinking. She pondered what she should say to the protagonist now. The principal told the student it was time for him to show his charms. Miss Song told the boy to be a romantic prince. The main character didn't like it. The protagonist pondered and thought he should politely decline. The principal reported that the walk will go to the beach. All the schoolgirls will be in swimsuits. Feng was very much surprised at this unexpected turn of events. The protagonist realistically imagined how good his female classmates would look on the beach. The principal told the boy that if everything went over budget, his scholarship would be reduced. Feng was surprised. He had never heard of a scholarship before. The protagonist said confidently that he would do whatever was required of him, but reluctantly. The headmistress said to ideally convince the girl before the weekend. The woman said goodbye to the boy and said she would be gone for a few days. The main character was very much disturbed. He remembered that the Tongfei girl always resorts to violence. At this time, in the girls' bathroom, several high school girls were showering and chatting amongst themselves. In the neighboring showers washed at the same time classmates of the main character. The disciple said excitedly that Feng Qin was able to escape from Xiaoei's revenge. The student remembered that the main character had destroyed the staff the girl had sent him. Feng also didn't drink the drink Moya gave him. The schoolgirl suggested to her girlfriend that they strangle the protagonist in a secret location. The student was surprised. She asked her girlfriend how they could strangle a guy. At the same time, the red-haired student got up from her bench in the shower. The schoolgirl opened the next stall and walked in on her girlfriend. She wanted to show how they would sneak up on a guy. After that, the student grabbed her girlfriend's breast from behind. She said she had to use it to strangle the guy. The girl told her friend to trust her. Eventually, she'll be able to do it. The schoolgirl said that the guy was very vigilant, and the plan might not work if they took the initiative. She offered to wait. The schoolgirl with blue hair blushed. Her girlfriend gestured that she agreed. The boy woke up the next day and decided to fulfill the principal request. The protagonist walked up to his classroom, and after standing around for a bit, he decided to go in. Feng walked leisurely through the classroom. He decided not to draw attention to himself. The protagonist paced past the desks, approaching a group of devil girls. At this time, the 4 schoolgirls were sitting and chatting amongst themselves as if nothing had happened. Fen was walking through the classroom, barely audible. He was already almost next to the girls. Walking over to the right parka, the guy pushed back a chair quietly and sat down on it. Smiling, the protagonist asked the girl if he could talk to her. The student was greatly surprised. She asked the protagonist again. The guy asked the girl to go with the main group for a walk near the beach. The other female students became very excited upon hearing such words. The schoolgirl with blue hair told the guy it was none of his business. At the same time, she was nervously shuffling her feet under the table. The girlfriends showed angrily with their gestures to the schoolgirl what she was doing wrong. Quite unexpectedly, the student replied to the guy calmly that she agreed. The protagonist told the girl that if she agreed, he could do something else. Suddenly, Feng stopped talking. He only now realized what the girl had said to him. The protagonist was very surprised. He questioned the girl Tongfei how she could agree with him so quickly. The student brushed the guy off and said that she agreed, and he now let him fuck off. The guy thought about it. He moved away from the girl, but he couldn't understand why she agreed so quickly. Feng thought to himself that the girl agreed so quickly because there was some kind of conspiracy. He then decided that the swimsuits were the key. Fei's girlfriend asked her friend what she was up to. The schoolgirl asked her why the protagonist invited her to the beach. Tongfei shouted angrily that the protagonist doesn't want anything good for the girls. Fei said that's why she agreed to the main character's proposal. Here, the girlfriends introduced Tongfei as an ancient tomb explorer. The schoolgirls told Tongfei to think like a girl. The red-haired schoolgirl shouted angrily that everything was going upside down. The student said thoughtfully that if the guy was really up to something bad, it wouldn't be easy for them to get to him. The schoolgirl Tongfei said with a smart look that she understood her classmate. After that, the entire group of 4 schoolgirl devils gathered to discuss their plans. One student with purple hair sat and sighed sadly. The protagonist called the principal and told her cheerfully that he was finished. The woman told the guy that he made it fast. She questioned if he was telling her the truth. The schoolboy told the principal that he had overcome great difficulties to convince Tongfei. He asked for some kind of bonus for himself. The woman said she would fulfill his request when she returned. Fen rejoiced. He figured the woman would give him a bonus in the form of a good meal. He went to the door. Afterward, the main character said hello and said the door was unlocked. The guy walked into the room. He noticed a schoolgirl changing her clothes. After that, the protagonist and the female student looked at each other with bewilderment. The main character was in great shock. He didn't expect to see a naked girl here. The main character was very much surprised. He did not expect to see the girl Chu Xiaoye here. The schoolgirl looked at the guy with absolute indifference. He looked a little embarrassed. The boy remembered that the girl had almost castrated him last time. He noticed that Xiaoye was rummaging through her bag. The main character has decided that he will not quietly wait for his death. It is time to do something. Fen leisurely reached into his pocket and very slowly pulled out his smartphone. After that, the protagonist with the maximum level of speed started taking pictures of the girl. The overjoyed guy told the girl that she should listen to him if she didn't want the pictures to get on the net. Xiaoyi didn't react to her boyfriend in any way. She was completely calm. The schoolgirl reached into her purse and pulled out a metal grenade. The student then pulled the pin and confidently tossed the grenade to the floor. Then the grenade hit the tiles on the floor and rolled to the feet of the protagonist. Feng was very frightened when he saw the grenade. He barely had time to cover himself with his hands. After 5 seconds, the guy realized that there was no explosion and the grenade was a dud. The girl explained that this grenade, once activated, erases the data of any electronic device within a radius of a few meters. The protagonist checked his phone and it was empty. Xiaoyi told the guy judiciously that his pictures had been erased. The schoolgirl reminded the student that he broke into the girls' and locker room, took a photo to threaten her. She pointed to the security camera. Feng was very scared. He realized that now he wouldn't be able to justify himself. The protagonist realized something had to be done. He had to do something to placate the girl. The student fell down on the floor and begged for the girl to spare him. Xiao Ye looked at the protagonist with interest. She wanted to ask him for something. The student stretched out her leg and told the protagonist to lick it. Then a guy walked into the locker room and told the girl it was time for her to go to class. The guy was completely unemotional. He didn't pay any attention to the main character. Xiao looked at the guy who entered with surprise and bewilderment. The protagonist was very happy. He realized that he was now saved. The student replied to the schoolboy that she would spare him for now and he could go. Xiao reminded the protagonist to never turn her down if she needed him in the future. The schoolboy was very happy that he managed to escape. He realized that he had escaped by a miracle. The main character felt destroyed. He didn't know what to do. Fen realized that he would have been finished if the butler hadn't walked in on time. Xiao Ye called the butler Lawrence and said that he helped to purposely free the protagonist after she decided to do something. Butler looked at the girl and wondered if that was what she thought of him. Xiao Ye looked at Lawrence and wondered if he seriously said that to her. The main character was very excited. He realized that the girl would pursue him. He just didn't understand how it would be. Feng was afraid of any sound, and he got a message on his phone from a girl named Tong Fei Lu. She told him to come to the gate in the morning. The student thought fearfully to himself, but didn't realize this morning would be a picnic or military training. In the girls' dormitory, the girl reported that the message for the guy had been sent earlier. Now it was time for Wei to act. The girlfriend told the girl that the main character is a completely virgin boy. A friend said the main character could be an animal. The student said cheerfully that her girlfriends always think boys are animals. The girl said that Fen is close with girls because he's used to it, not because he's good at it. Then the student said that after she was on the main character, he would be seduced. The next day at dawn, the main character woke up early. He had to go to a meeting. The guy was yawning and bored. Fen told himself that he was overexcited because of that. He didn't sleep well and was very sleepy now. The guy pondered to himself how the girl was going to torture him. For him, it was scary. To ward off the bad thoughts, the guy decided to hurry to the meeting. Fen decided to walk as fast as possible and not slow down on the way to the gate. The protagonist stopped near the gate. There was no one there, and it was suspiciously quiet. Fen was completely confused. He didn't realize where all the people were. The clock was showing 15 to 6. The student thought he was late and wondered what he should do to wait or leave when he heard a noise from outside. The boy looked around and noticed that the noise was coming from a small building nearby. The main character walked to the doors and slowly opened them. He was still a little scared. Feng slowly entered the building. He asked in a frightened voice if anyone was there. The guy saw a schoolgirl lying on the floor completely unconscious. The student said hello and asked the girl if she was all right. She remained silent. Looking closer, the protagonist realized that Wei Wei Tong was lying in front of him. The guy was getting really excited. He reached out to the girl and asked if she was okay. Wei Wei said in an exhausted voice that her leg hurts, and then the main character said that he would take the girl to the medical center. Fen silently carried the girl on his back. He was completely focused. The girl wanted to say something. The student felt her touching his back. Wei Wei hugged the guy even harder and thanked him in a whisper. The student liked it and even felt that he had new strength. After gathering his thoughts, the guy said he was fine. He asked the girl why she fell in the warehouse. Wei Wei reported that she went there to get a picnic napkin and accidentally touched the basket. The guy pulled the girl to the nurse's station. He told the student that when the nurse came, she would give the girl some ointment. Wei Wei replied to the protagonist that the nurse would be at the beach and would not be coming to the nurse's station. The main character was surprised and flustered. He didn't know what to do now. After that, Fei Wei thought for a while and decided to ask the guy. The girl stretched out her leg to Fen without the nurse. Only he could help her. The student looked at the protagonist and asked that he do it for her. The protagonist agreed. He told the girl that she could be hurt, so she should bear it. Wei Wei said very gently to the main character that he was extremely caring to her. The hairdryer helped the girl put ointment on her leg. After that, the protagonist told the student to rest. The protagonist walked to the door and walked resolutely out of the nurse's station. Wei Wei was very much disappointed. After that, she lay on her side. The student commanded her girlfriends that they could go out now. There was a stomping of feet as the female students entered the infirmary and began to question Wei Wei. The schoolgirl asked if the main character really didn't do anything Wei Wei. The student replied that if things were that easy with Fen, she wouldn't have to get involved. Fei's girlfriend asked her friend what she thought of it now. The student replied that the protagonist might suspect something wrong if she just walked up to him and needed a good reason. The girl remembered that Fen had been on guard the last time she gave him water for no reason. Eventually, apprentice Faye realized that it was time for an insidious trap. Then all four schoolgirl devils got together and walked together. Only the student with purple hair was silent and pensive. At that time, the main character approached the entrance of the school. He noticed that everyone was already gathered. A group of schoolgirls got together and everyone got on the bus. A school bus was taking a group of female students and the main character to the airport. The girls about the school sat quietly in their chairs and chatted amongst themselves. The devil schoolgirls were talking amongst themselves. They needed to make sure that on the airplane, Wei's girlfriend sat next to the main character. Very soon, the bus brought all the schoolgirls and the guy to Chunin Pingao Airport. All the tourists walked around the airport building and headed for their exit. Before the flight, the school's students came in for a rigorous customs check. The girls and the guy walked through the corridors and reached their airplane. In the end, as planned, the main character was sitting next to the Wei girl. The guy asked the student how her leg was. The student thanked him for helping her. The girl leaned over to the guy's ear and breathed. She recalled that it felt good when he applied the salve to her. The protagonist did not understand the reason for such tenderness on the part of the girl. Wei, in response to the guy's surprised look, just smiled happily at him. After the airplane flight, the airplane with the students went in for a landing. The protagonist, along with the schoolgirls, landed at Shanya Fenghuang International Airport. The students got off the plane and headed for the airport gate. The protagonist, along with his suitcase, headed towards the tourist bus. The guy then began loading bags and valises onto the bus in which they were to depart. A comfortable bus took the protagonist and his classmates to the hotel. In the end, all the students had to be accommodated at the Chudao International Hotel. The student thought that there were only 16 double rooms left in this hotel she had barely reserved. The schoolgirl approached the front desk. She was checking on accommodations. The girl told everyone to take their room card now. The protagonist stood with everyone else in line to get a card from the room. The student said the last person in line was sharing a room with her. She saw the main character. The schoolgirl was very surprised and angry. She even dropped the card. The student never expected to have to live in a room with the main character. Fen suggested that the schoolgirl rent another room as a solution. The hotel administration told the students that they had no other rooms. Faye said annoyed to be given the number from Fei Chin's room. The student was very much annoyed to herself. She only shouted curses. The schoolgirl asked her friend Wei with interest what she thought of it. Wei replied that everything is going great, and after being with Faye, the protagonist will never see the sun again. After that, the schoolgirls laughed an evil laugh. They were waiting to see what would happen to the main character. At this time, in room 705, a lone schoolgirl was sitting on the bed. The girl opened the locket and looked at it for a long time. Inside was a picture of her with her boyfriend. Suddenly, the schoolgirl received a text message. She looked carefully at her phone. The guy suggested that the girl meet him tomorrow afternoon near the Cape. He wanted to tell her something about Yao. At this time, the protagonist, along with the girl Faye, were sorting out their things in the room together. The student and the boy felt uncomfortable. They occupied themselves with unpacking. Schoolgirl Faye felt particularly awkward. She didn't want to share a room with a guy. The protagonist looked around and realized that he felt very uncomfortable. To smooth things over, Fen told the girl that maybe this night he should stay outside. A very confused and excited protagonist smiled and scratched his head. The girl Faye turned around to the guy. She decided to say something to him and thought about it. The schoolgirl turned to the guy and said she couldn't throw her classmate outside. After a bit of thinking, the protagonist decided that he'd better leave the room after all. The guy was walking around the hotel. He still felt very awkward. After thinking for a while, Fen decided to go for a walk on the beach to unwind. The guy went into the locker room. He decided to change to look better. The door creaked open, and the main character stepped out of the locker room onto the beach for a walk. Fen smiled all around him. He shouted to all the bikini-clad beauties to wait for him. As he approached the sea, the boy was very much surprised to see no one around him. The protagonist looked to his left and didn't see a single soul on the beach. Then the guy looked to the right and noticed that there was no one there either. The student thought to himself that a private beach was bullshit since there was no one there. Standing near the water, the protagonist heard himself being called from outside by name. The boy didn't expect to see girls in bikinis. Feng saw all his classmates standing in water suits. The main character was very much surprised. He didn't realize who it was in front of him. Schoolgirl Faye replied to the guy that the girls were wearing wetsuits. Fen asked angrily where the swimsuits and bikinis were. The student answered him that they would not let his plans come to fruition. Everyone's diving today. The stunned protagonist slumped down on the sand. He didn't understand how this could have happened. The guy noticed a girl sitting nearby under an umbrella drinking a cocktail. The main character came up and asked the girl why she wasn't going swimming. The schoolgirl replied to the protagonist that she would sit here and watch everyone. The protagonist was very much surprised here. Suddenly something diverted his attention. The guy noticed a girl in a red swimsuit walking along the beach nearby. The protagonist thought to himself where this blonde girl was going. The protagonist followed the girl. She was walking along the coast along the sand. Fen noticed the girl walk up to some guy. He looked closely. The protagonist realized that the girl Lan met near the sea with Yuan Cheng. Yuan Cheng greeted the girl and said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. He added that she had gotten prettier. Lan asked impatiently at the guy to tell her about Yao Yao soon. Yuan agreed with the schoolgirl and said he would tell her everything. The guy said there was a time in his life when Yao had a crush on him. That being said, the Yao girl knew very well that Yuan only loved Lan. Yao was determined not to ruin her friendship with Lan, and that's why she decided to keep everything a secret. A little later, Feng found out. Then he threatened Yao that he would tell her secret if he refused. Love Begets Hate was that one night the protagonist had a fight with Yao. After an argument, the angry guy pushed the girl off a cliff and she fell. Lan listened to Ban's story without any emotion. She pondered. Lan asked with interest to Yuan how he could know everything in such detail. Suddenly, the main character ran up from the side. He grabbed Yuan. Feng struck Yuan with all his might and he didn't have time to fight back and started to fall to the ground. After a sudden and crushing blow, Yuan fell to the ground. Fellow Yuan even rolled over backwards. The main character's attack was a surprise to him. The Lan girl looked at everything that had happened with great surprise. She was frightened. The protagonist shouted to Yuan Cheng that he had previously told him to stay away from Lana. Guy Yuan coughed and began to slowly shift into himself. He was surprised to see the protagonist. Fen walked over to his opponent lying on the ground and grabbed him by the throat with his hand. The protagonist lifted his enemy above the ground, holding him by the throat with his hand. Yuan Cheng was completely exhausted. He could in no way fight off Feng hanging on his arm. Fen menacingly held his opponent hanging on his arm. He reminded him that he didn't understand his words. When Chen felt his strength leaving him, he began to cough and gasp. The protagonist, holding fellow Yuan by the throat with his hand, prepared to throw him to the ground. Fen swung his opponent to the ground and he fell unconscious on the beach. Yuan lay on the sand for a very long time. After that, he came to his senses and rose to his feet. Then Yuan Chen decided to flee. He ran away from Fen. Lan's girlfriend ran up to the guy and asked him fearfully what he was doing. Feng told the girl that Yuan Cheng was a bad guy and she should stay away from him. The schoolgirl hesitated. She said that Yuan Cheng wanted to tell her something about Yao. The protagonist was very much surprised. He asked the student what Yuan had said to her. Lan looked suspiciously at the boy and motioned for him to tell her what had happened last night. Fen hesitated. He realized that he couldn't tell the girl the truth. The disciple closed his eyes and thought. He pondered how he could justify himself. After a long pause, Feng blurted out that he had a fight with Yao's girlfriend at night and threw her accidentally off a cliff. The Lan girl was silent. She thought about the words she heard from the guy. The schoolgirl turned around, called the protagonist a murderer, and started running down the beach. The schoolboy was discouraged. Without any strength, he slumped down on the sand. The guy realized he was in big trouble in his life. He was walking on the beach by the water. Feng hoped to himself that his secret would not be revealed. He was afraid that Yuan Cheng wouldn't say anything unnecessary. After taking a walk, the student decided that life goes on. He decided to go back. Fen decided he wasn't getting any more bikinis and headed back to the hotel. At this time on the beach, all the schoolgirls were diving and swimming in wetsuits. One of the students then swam out of the water and asked the girl on the shore what they should do next. The schoolgirl with blue hair looked around carefully. She looked around for the main character. The student then yelled at the schoolgirls to put on bikinis. The schoolgirls were very excited. The girl reminded them not to swim too far away because it was dangerous. The students continued to relax on the beach. They took lots of pictures. All 4 schoolgirl devils sat side by side and relaxed in the sun. The red-haired schoolgirl turned to her friend Faye and said they should do it today. Faye asked excitedly to her girlfriend if she had a plan of action. After that, the red-haired student took out a small jar of pills. The schoolgirl told her friend Faye to put those pills in the main character's food. The student leaned over to Faye's girlfriend and started whispering something in her ear. The schoolgirl's words pleased the girl, and Faye said cheerfully that she liked the idea. The apprentice devilisses laughed happily and maliciously after discussing their plans. In the evening, the schoolgirls decided to realize their devious and sinister plans. The 3 students were quietly sneaking around the building. They needed to get to the cafeteria. Student Faye asked her girlfriends what they should do next. One student said that the main character wouldn't eat the pills if they just gave them to him. Another student said that they would have to put them in their food themselves. The student suggested that one of them distract Fenya. That would be great. Faye, a schoolgirl, didn't understand her friend's conversation. She asked them to just tell her what to do. Already after that, Apprentice Faye passed the front door to the dining room. The girlfriends told Faye that they would distract the staff in the kitchen, and she should slip the pills into the food. One of the students looked closely. She was checking the current situation in great detail. After that, the schoolgirls crept very slowly toward the back entrance of the cafeteria. The schoolgirl carefully peeked into the kitchen. She followed the actions of the cook. Immediately when the girl entered the kitchen, she decided to hide quietly. The student imagined realistically what would happen if the cook noticed her. At the same time, the Fae girl was very carefully and slowly sneaking around the kitchen. The schoolgirl walked over to the food dish and very gently and carefully dropped the pills in there. After that, Faye looked around with great attention to see if anyone had noticed her. The girl informed the schoolgirl that she would assign her girlfriends to distribute the food. The red-haired student was overjoyed at this information from her girlfriend. In the evening, the canteen would start dinner there with the female students from the school. During dinner, a schoolgirl asked the protagonist where he had been after dinner. The guy replied sadly that he hated the heat and that's why he went back to the hotel first. The girl told the guy that on the beach all the students had changed into a swimsuit, but Fen never came to them. The guy felt very sorry and thought to himself that it all looked like a love scene. The student watched very closely as the schoolboy walked around the dining hall. The schoolgirl approached the table where there were trays with various food. The girl then prepared to make her planned meal swap. Discreetly, the schoolgirl walked over to the table and very quickly picked up one tray. The student then replaced the trays of food very quickly and discreetly. In order not to attract attention, the girl slowly and stealthily moved away from the table. The students of the school came to the table with trays and each took some food for themselves. After that, the main character walked over to his desk and placed the tray on the table. Fen began to consume his dinner. He didn't realize that poison had been added to the food. The schoolgirl was overjoyed that she was able to put her plan into action. After dinner, the main character was leaving the dining room. The schoolgirl waved to him happily and cheerfully. The guy was walking and thought to himself that the soup in the canteen was oversalted today. Feng then walked to the door of his suite. He prepared to open the door. Entering the room, the protagonist noticed that the schoolgirl has already gone to bed. Fen thought and decided to himself that he too would go to bed early. The guy began to undress, preparing to go to bed. The girl did not sleep and secretly peeped at the main character. Outside the door stood a schoolgirl red-haired student asking her friend Faye when the effects of the pills would kick in. Faye's girlfriend replied to her girlfriend that the action would start in 10 minutes. The students continued to stand at the door and listen to everything that was going on. The girl lay on the bed and pretended to be asleep. She thought to herself that when Fen attacked her under the influence of the pills, she would defend herself and wait for her friends to steal into the room. Schoolgirl Faye said they would take photo and video evidence and then present it. The girlfriend asked the schoolgirl if Wei had dealt with the cameras at the hotel. Wei then replied cheerfully that the cameras wouldn't be running until midnight. The schoolgirls happily wondered if they should wait until Fong couldn't stand it. The protagonist was deep asleep at the time. He was hoping to dream about bikinis. The schoolgirl lay with her eyes open. She realized that time was up. Fen was quietly and peacefully sleeping silently without any movement. Half an hour later, the protagonist turned over on the bed. The student was still awake. The guy further quietly and peacefully slept. The student never waited. The schoolgirl with red hair didn't understand why the room was so quiet. Schoolgirl Wei said very sadly that it shouldn't have happened. The student asked tiredly and frustrated, wondering if the pills hadn't worked. Wei's girlfriend told her that they needed to wait a little longer. But the schoolgirls under the door never waited for anything, and the next morning came. The sun brightened the surroundings, and it was time for the main character to wake up. The apprentice lay on the bed thinking about how she would get back at Wei for her pills not working. At this time, Fen woke up on the bed. He had had a very good night's sleep. The guy got out of bed and stretched. He got ready to get dressed and leave. After waking up, the protagonist began to leisurely dress unsuspectingly. He noticed that the student hadn't woken up yet. Feng decided to go and have breakfast first. The guy went to the door and started to open it. He felt some disturbance behind the door. The guy opened the door and immediately noticed that there was something behind it. Coming out of the room, the main character noticed two schoolgirls lying there near the door. The students fell asleep right by the front door they never came to. Feng recognized the girls. One of them was named Wei Wei Tong. He had helped her before. The other student by the door was named Moya Jiao. Feng asked the schoolgirls what they were doing here. The main character took the schoolgirls in his arms and carried them to their room. He could not understand what they were doing outside his room. Then the guy opened the door and entered the room where the two girlfriends lived. After Fen entered the room, he decided to leave the girls to sleep it off alone. The guy found the bed where the schoolgirl Wei was supposed to sleep. After that, the protagonist unceremoniously put the girl on her bed. Then already the guy laid the second schoolgirl on the neighboring bed. After recovering, the disciple covered schoolgirl Wei gently with a blanket. After that, the protagonist walked over to the red-haired student and covered her too. The slightly tired guy decided it was time for him to go and get some breakfast. Fen walked into the dining room. He was feeling very hungry. The guy sat down at the table and began to consume the food. The student didn't even watch himself. He consumed large quantities of food, leaving only empty plates. After that, a cafeteria worker came up behind the guy and he called out to him. Meanwhile, in the room where the two schoolgirls lived, there was a loud knock on the door. The girl outside the doors was shouting loudly and calling for a schoolgirl named Wei Moi. The red-haired student rose from the bed and walked wearily to the door. The girl opened the door at this time. A schoolgirl named Wei woke up with difficulty. Girl Wei said that no man can resist the effects of the pills. The girlfriend said cheerfully that Fen might be impotent. Wei responded by saying that they needed to raise the bar to stand up to the protagonist. The student with blue hair suggested that the schoolgirls try again. After thinking for a while, the girl suggested testing the pills on some guy. Schoolgirl Wei, after a little thought, fully agreed to her girlfriend's proposal. The schoolgirls lay on their beds completely exhausted and tired. Faye asked girlfriend Wei what kind of pills they gave to the protagonist. Feng Qin slept like a pig without any reaction. The protagonist decided to go out for a walk on the coast. He remembered his meeting with the girl Lan. The disciple looked around. He wanted to find young Chung now. Feng realized that Yuan might have said a lot of unnecessary things to the Lan girl. At the same time, fellow Yuan was sitting lonely at the bar behind the counter and drinking. Just then, 3 devil girls entered the bar. They were in search of their next victim. Faye asked her friend why they came here to find the target. Wei replied that boys are most vulnerable in a bar. The girl noticed Yuan sitting at the counter. She suggested this guy as a target. After that, Wei said she's the only one who'll make it a success with the guy. The student sat down next to Yuan and asked the bartender for a glass of chidao pulque. Yuan said hello to the girl with interest and asked if she was alone. The girl very friendly, seductively said hello to the guy. Yuan asked the Wei girl if she really wanted the chidao pulque cocktail. He said it was very strong. Wei asked the guy with interest what exactly then he was drinking now himself. Yuan moved his glass to the girl and said that he was drinking expensive and vintage wine. Wei was surprised at the guy's answer. She didn't know if he meant it. The girl looked at the guy and offered him an expensive drink on the counter. Yuan was very much interested. He turned his head to the side to see the drink the girl wanted. The guy noticed there was a bottle with a special offer on top of the counter. At the same time, the girl added the pills to the guy's glass without any emotion. Yuan turned to the Wei girl and offered her a drink each. She happily agreed. Then boy Yuan got more and more drunk sitting by himself at the bar. The young man clinked his glass happily with the Wei girl. Yuan very quickly and without delay drained his glass completely to the bottom. The schoolgirl very slowly and leisurely tasted her drink in the glass. The student stood up and said she was leaving. The boy was confused that his conversation partner was leaving so quickly. Wei looked at the guy seductively and said they would probably meet again. Apprentice Wei walked out of the bar and told her girlfriends angrily that she didn't want to meet this idiot anymore. Faye asked her friend how it went. Wei told her that the pills would take 10 minutes to take effect. All 3 schoolgirl devils decided to sit and socialize at a nearby cafe. Schoolgirl Wei said that time was up. Yuan walked uncertainly out of the bar. Guy Yuan looked around with a very angry and excited gaze. Just then, Yuan noticed a beautiful green-eyed girl walking nearby along with a friend. Guy Yuan looked at the girl with a crazed look and called her a nymph. The girl with green eyes heard the Yuan guys shout and turned around. At the same time, the girl's security guard worked in time. He grabbed and felled the inadequate guy. The guard with all his might pressed Yuan to the ground and piled on top of him. The girl watched from the side. The guard then asked the mistress what they should do with this idiot. The girl became silent and thoughtful. She continued to gaze at Yuan. At this time, Yuan was lying on the ground and was babbling something incoherently, calling the girl a nymph. After that, the girl ordered the guard to take the guy with her. The 3 devil girls watched with interest as Yuan was dragged down the street. One of the girlfriends said that the kid got hit hard. He provoked Chang Yan. Faye asked her friends if it was okay to cause trouble to a stranger. All 3 schoolgirls then sat chatting amongst themselves and drinking tea and cakes. At the same time, the girl called the main character. She told him to come to the hotel at the crossroads as there was a job for him. The guy immediately agreed. Fen walked through the city and found the right hotel for him called the Villa. The guy walked around the hotel lobby marveling at its chic decorations. The protagonist walked around the inn until he came across the butler. The butler greeted Fenya and told him to follow him. As they walked through the inn, the boy thanked the butler and said that he was his savior. Lawrence replied nonchalantly that he didn't know what he was talking about. At this time, the girl was sitting and resting in her bedroom. She was waiting for the protagonist. The butler told the lady that Feng Qin had arrived. The girl told the boy to come in. A schoolboy walked into a girl's apartment and asked her what he could do for her. The girl leisurely got up from her seat and walked close to the protagonist. After a little thought, the girl told the guy that she had a difficult task for him. The girl said she was attacked by some freak in the middle of the street today. Fen replied that the freak was very unlucky and probably liked the girl. The girl got angry at the guy's answer and seemed like he disrespected her. Fen told the girl that if some freak dared to attack her, it meant he wasn't enjoying his life. The girl said the attacker looked a little strange. She told the guy to go and interrogate him with Lawrence. Fang agreed. As the boy walked along with the butler, he asked Lawrence what they would actually do. Then the two of them walked to the right door. The butler said they needed to go in here. Lawrence opened the door and told the protagonist to go inside. The disciple walked into the room and saw that there was a tied Yuan Chang hanging there. The main character was very much surprised. He even exclaimed Yuan's name. The butler was surprised. He asked the protagonist if he knew the attacker. Feng replied that he knows Yuan, but they have a bad relationship. Lawrence said he didn't have to worry about anything. The guy asked the butler why he needed all that stuff on the floor. Lawrence replied calmly that it was just his little hobby. The butler went to the door where Yuan was inside and closed it. The protagonist stayed outside the door and listened to what was going on inside. The guy could hear Yuan Chen's screams and the sounds of a beating coming from behind the door. 2 hours later, the butler came out and said he was the attacker himself and didn't know what had gotten into him. Feng replied that he only heard Yuan's screams. Lawrence replied that he could be trusted as he was a professional. Then the butler said they had to report back to my lady. The boy followed Lawrence and thought that this butler was as crazy as his mistress. The butler knocked on the door and told the girl that the task was done. She replied for him to come in. The girl asked the butler how it went with the interrogation of her attacker. Lawrence replied that the assailant was a common bully under the influence of drugs. Feng wondered to himself how the butler could know that Yuan was drugged without even questioning him. Lawrence reported that the protagonist knew the assailant. The girl wondered. Feng said that he knows Yuan personally and has wanted to finish him off for a very long time. The girl asked the guy with interest why he disliked Yuan so much. The main character said that Yuan once stole a tasty treat from him. The girl didn't believe it and said that the guy was making fun of her. The guy very confidently told the girl that he wouldn't dare abuse her. After that, the interlocutor thoughtfully silently looked at the protagonist. After thinking for a long time, the girl exhaled and decided to turn to the guy. The girl said that the guy should bring her a coconut for rice. Feng replied that the task would be accomplished. The girl watched in amazement for a long time as the guy quickly rushed down the street from the hotel. Afterwards, the girl asked Lawrence what he thought of the main character's words. The butler said that Feng was hiding something. My lady instructed the butler to interrogate the protagonist's enemy once more to learn his secrets. Lawrence ran to do as instructed. The protagonist thought to himself that now Yuan would stay away from the Xiao Dou girl. The protagonist decided to himself that he should definitely find out what Yuan might have said to the Xiaolan girl. At the same time, the schoolgirl devils were resting in their room. The student poured water into a glass and offered Nangong some to drink. The girl asked Ding Han Yu what she thought of the protagonist. The schoolgirl replied that she thought Fen was very gentle. The girlfriend thought that the boy was acting like a pervert. A student with purple hair offered to read cards. She said that the other girls had decided to do something stupid again. The schoolgirl said she wanted to make coconut rice and asked her friend to get her a coconut. She agreed. The student told her girlfriend that she would familiarize herself with her cooking skills. In the far room, 3 schoolgirls were discussing tonight's activities amongst themselves. Faye said there was nothing wrong with the pills, but it's unclear why they didn't work on the main character that night. The red-haired schoolgirl suggested that it could be that Fen is gay. Wei replied to her girlfriend that even a gay man would get an erection after consuming the drugs. Faye suggested that it could be that the main character has no sex drive. The girlfriends thought for a moment. They realized that Faye had said the most reasonable explanation. The girl opened the door and entered the room. She noticed that the main character was lying on the bed and looking at his phone. The apprentice asked Feng what he would be doing tomorrow on his free day. The guy replied to the girl that he would go to the beach to look for coconuts, which he really needed. The girl told the guy not to run and to follow all the rules. The student rushed to inform her girlfriend Wei Wei where the main character would be tomorrow. Girl Wei got a message that tomorrow Feng will be on the beach picking coconuts. They can proceed with the plan. The girlfriend asked Wei if they all needed to go together to check on Feng. The girl said they would go when the time was right. Wei then walked over to her girlfriend and began whispering detailed plans to her. At the same time, the main character and the schoolgirl were sleeping peacefully in the far room. The guy in his sleep never noticed someone else enter the room. The intruder noticed the suitcases and bags on the side. He approached them. The stranger noticed the bag with the schoolgirl's belongings and looked at it for a long time. After that, the intruder smiled to himself and decided to take action. Feng went out for a walk the next day. He liked the weather outside. The protagonist thought that even on such a beautiful day he should be picking coconuts for a girl. The guy decided to hurry up because lunch was coming up, and 2 female students were watching him closely. The protagonist climbed a tree sitting on top of it and noticed a girl approaching him. Feng asked the girl named Ding Han Yu what she was doing here. Han Yu said that she was asked to get coconut by her girlfriend Nangong. The protagonist replied to the schoolgirl that he too had come for a coconut, and he would help her. The guy climbed higher up the palm tree and yelled to the girl to wait for him and he'd be back. The main character climbed up a palm tree and found where there were some coconuts. Fen shouted to the girl on the ground to get ready to catch the coconut. Suddenly, 2 schoolgirls came up to the tree. They asked the protagonist and Ding Han Yu what they were doing here. The guy jumped down from the tree and said they were picking coconuts. He asked what the students were doing here. One student hugged a guy's arm and said they wanted to take him to a beach volleyball game. Another schoolgirl told the guy cheerfully not to say no. The Han Yu girl fearfully and shyly said that she wanted to leave, and then the girl slipped up. Han Yu couldn't keep her footing on the ground and fell right into the hands of the protagonist. Feng was lying on the sand on the beach. Han Yu's girlfriend was lying on top of him. Schoolgirls standing nearby noticed the main character and the girls next to them. They wanted to approach them. The Han Yu girl with a worried voice asked the protagonist to apologize. The guy answered her calmly that he was fine, and the main thing was that the girl was not hurt. Han Yu replied to the protagonist that it was because of him that she wasn't hurt. The female students came up and asked Wei Wei and the Moya girl what they were doing here. One student asked about Ding Han Yu's condition. After that, the schoolgirls looked at the main character. They told him that he has a very nice pumped-up body and strong abs. This made the guy very self-conscious. He didn't expect to get so much attention. Wei Wei looked at the protagonist with great attention and uninterruptedly. The red-headed schoolgirl decided to walk up to the guy and check out his abs. The student romantically told the guy that he had a really awesome torso. The girl approached slowly and touched the main character's stomach with her hand. The student continued to stand by the guy. She told him he had very strong abs. Feng was very puzzled and surprised. He didn't understand why the schoolgirls were paying so much attention to him. Then suddenly, the other schoolgirl standing in the distance turned around and looked at the guy. The female students approached the schoolboy and they all wanted to taste his abs. Schoolgirls in bikinis stood around the main character and touched him from all sides. Girls' hands were reaching out to the guy from all directions and touching him. The schoolgirl said confidently that it looked like their hunch was right. Wei replied that it now made sense why there was no reaction to the drug. The exhausted protagonist plopped down on the sand. He felt offended. Feng fearfully picked up the coconut in his hands and told the Han Yu girl that he had to go. The student turned around and watched as the guy ran down the beach at high speed. The guy ran to a safe distance. He looked to make sure no one was around. Fen wondered that he didn't have any reaction, or it would have been awkward. The protagonist was sad. He couldn't understand what had happened to him. After that, Fen guessed what he had lying around, and there was no reaction. The guy realized all of this happened to him after that incident at the gym when a girl punched him in the groin. The purple-haired student read the cards and said the outcome was expected. Then the schoolgirl said that the protagonist's suffering had just begun. Han Yu entered the room. The girl asked the schoolgirl who walked in if she had brought her a coconut. The Han Yu girl replied calmly to her girlfriend that she had a coconut. The purple-haired student said she needed to do a reading once. The schoolgirl began laying out the cards and looking carefully at what they predicted. Han Yu watched what her girlfriend was doing with great attention. The results of the divination excited the girl very much. She looked carefully at the card. The girl Han Yu asked her friend Nangun what was wrong. In response, Nangong was silent for a long time. She didn't answer anything to the schoolgirl. After a long pause, Nangong said resolutely for Han Yu to bring Qin Feng here when he returned. The disciple was worried. She couldn't understand why she had to translate Qin Feng. Nangun said that if the guy didn't come, something terrible would happen. The Han Yu girl was very worried. She immediately opened the door and ran outside. At this time, the main character was walking down the street with an absent look. He was holding a coconut in his hands. The guy thought to himself what to do. He couldn't find any solutions. After that, Feng arrived at the hotel. There he had to hand over the coconut. The butler greeted the boy and said he had been waiting for his arrival. The schoolboy said he had brought coconut for Ye Chui. Lawrence looked closely at the protagonist. He realized something was wrong with him. Butler asked the guy what was bothering him and if he could help him. The protagonist smiled at the butler and told him that he couldn't help him in this situation and he had to go. The butler stopped by my lady and informed her that the protagonist had brought a coconut. The girl was surprised. She'd already forgotten she'd given the guy an errand about the coconut. The woman said she remembered but asked the butler to remove the coconut. Milady asked the butler if there was any progress in questioning the assailant. Lawrence smiled and replied calmly to the girl that there was no progress yet. The butler said to wait a bit before questioning Yuan further. Lawrence reported that now the main character was acting a little strange, as if something had happened to him. My lady has ordered the butler to take care of Feng. The rest will be taken care of by the Jia Jia girls along with Yi Yi when they return. Lawrence bowed to his mistress and said humbly that he would fulfill everything. At this time, the Han Yu girl stood there and worriedly wondered to herself if the main character was hurt. She had fallen on top of him. Then the schoolgirl noticed Fen walking towards her with an absent look. The girl was very worried. She wanted to ask the boy what was wrong with him. A student with a frightened look asked what happened to the main character. Fen sullenly replied to the girl that he was fine. He asked how she was doing. The Han Yu girl replied to the guy excitedly that she should escort him to Nangong. The main character froze for a while. Then he said he would follow the girl. The schoolgirl entered the room and told Nangong that the main character was coming with her. The guy asked with an absent look asked the Nangong girl what was wrong. The student replied to the guy that he should know who she was. She also added that the student needed help. The protagonist rejoiced. He realized that not all was lost, and he could ask Nangong for help. Without thinking, Feng dropped to his knees and started asking the schoolgirl for help. Nangong asked the boy if he really needed her help. The kneeling disciple told the girl that he was willing to do whatever he could to get her help. Nangong replied to the guy that she wanted coconut rice. Feng replied that he would make it right away. Hanyu's girlfriend said she didn't realize the main character could cook. The student said that the main character can do much more than just cook food. He's a talented chef. The Hanyu girl asked with interest to her friend how she knew this. The student replied that she had learned everything through her fortune-telling. The guy was busy at the time. He was cooking dinner in the hotel's separate kitchen. The main character was able to create a very appetizing and classy dinner, and the girls were surprised when they sat down at the table. Nangong decided to be the first to taste the treat from the guy. She brought a spoonful of rice to her mouth. After that, it was Nanhao's turn. She also tasted the rice prepared by the guy. The Hanyu girl really liked the treat. She said it was very nice. Disciple Nangong was also satisfied. She gestured to thank the guy. A girl asked a guy where he learned to cook. The boy said that at one time his father decided to cook instead of his mother. The food prepared by his father was very bad, so the protagonist took over the kitchen duties. Feng was able to show that he was the best cook in the family. Because of this, he took on the responsibility of cooking. Hanyu said that the main character cares a lot about his family. The protagonist asked the girl Nangong to give him the answer to his question. Disciple Nangong wiped her face with a napkin and said that she would help the guy. The schoolgirl said that the protagonist should wait at the entrance to the hotel at 12 o'clock in the evening. Then a man will come who can help him. The protagonist decided not to wait for the appointed time. He went to the hotel lobby and watched the time. Feng walked in circles around the empty hall. He waited for someone to come and help him. Exactly at the appointed time, butler Lawrence showed up. The guy didn't expect to see him here. The protagonist decided to still go and talk to the butler now. Feng asked timidly to the butler if he could ask him for help now. Lawrence greeted the protagonist politely and asked if he wanted to ask for help right now. The schoolboy reported that the great reprimander said that Lawrence was the one who could help him. The butler was very much surprised at such received information from the lad. Lawrence then invited the student to sit down and talk things over at the table. The protagonist held nothing back and told Lawrence about his problems. The butler listened to the boy and said he had a way to help him. Feng was overjoyed. Lawrence said he couldn't tell the guy for free. He added that he had someone who needed the protagonist's help. Fen asked that the interlocutor give him a name. The butler tells the guy he needs to look for trouble from Lady E. Feng asked the butler what he had said. The butler repeated to the boy that he had to bother Lady E. After that, the butler fell silent. He continued to have a gentle smile on his face. The protagonist thought to himself that looking for trouble from Lady E is the same as looking for death. The butler told the guy that he wouldn't be in danger since he would protect him in the dark. The guy asked the butler why he would do that. Lawrence is supposed to kill people who bother the lady. The butler explained that because of her family background, Lady E had always been obeyed and respected. Because of this, she became stubborn, which is not good for her. Lawrence said that Lady E is used to obeying people. She will eliminate whoever opposes her. The butler said the lady was amazing. The boy thought to himself that the lady and her servant were freaks. The apprentice hesitated. He didn't understand how one could be against a lady specifically. The butler said that tomorrow Lady E will go to the amusement park, and the boy will be able to meet her there. The protagonist asked Lawrence when he could solve his problem. Butler reminded to have a boyfriend against Lady during her amusement park trip. The next day at the appointed time, Lady E arrived at the amusement park. The girl arrived in a luxury car and was accompanied by a butler. Lady E complained to Lawrence that it was very noisy. The butler replied that it was very interesting. At the entrance to the amusement park near the electronic vending machine, Lady E ran into the main character. The boy and girl stood looking silently around and at each other for a long time. Then the student told the lady that he had in no way expected to meet her here. The lady also looked at the boy in surprise. She didn't understand how they could have seen each other here. Afterward, the main character said that it was only because of fate that they met. A guy propositioned a girl to have fun together. Lady E asked him if he was sure about it. After that, the protagonist, along with the butler and the lady, started walking through the park. The guy noticed that his method of communication wasn't working and there was no progress. Then the girl told the butler irritably that she was very bored here. Suddenly, the guy had an original idea and decided it was the right thing to do. The schoolboy told his companions that there was an interesting thing, but would they have the courage to try it out? He suggested that the butler and the girl go on a roller coaster ride. The roller coaster very much frightened the main character. The girl was completely calm. Then the guy suggested we go to the horror room. He thought it would work. The room of horror frightened the boy very much, and the butler carried him out in his arms. It had no effect on Lady E. The guy afterward suggested another ride on the fast roller coaster. Lady E wasn't scared in any way, but riding the slides made the guy feel really bad. After riding the slides, Fenya threw up. The butler asked my lady if she enjoyed the entertainment, and she said she was bored. The guy decided he needed to rest before he came up with a better alternative. Fen saw an ice cream truck pull up and decided to run up to it. The guy told his companions to wait for him and ran to the truck. Fen walked over to the truck and bought treats for everyone from the ice cream man. The main character was excited because he was able to buy ice cream. Overjoyed, the boy ran to his companions. He expected the ice cream to please the girl. When the guy was very close, the butler tripped him, causing the schoolboy to drop the ice cream. Eventually, all the ice cream he bought got all over the girl and doused her. The protagonist was very scared. He decided that the lady was going to kill him. Lady E continued to further sit covered in ice cream without any emotion. The main character was very frightened he could not do anything, as he decided that the girl would definitely kill him. Suddenly, the girl had tears in her eyes and barely audibly called out to her father. The lad marveled at this time. The butler approached the offended girl. The protagonist noticed with surprise how tears began to drip from the girl's face. The crying girl sat silently and saw nothing in front of her. Lady E pictured herself seeing a guy running in front of her with ice cream in his hands. The girl remembered her childhood and felt as if her mother had touched her. In her memories, the lady recalled the gray fall weather when the wind carried the leaves. The girl felt real, as if her mother was standing next to her and had her hand on her head. The girl's memories were cut short by the butler's words. He told the lady to go home. Lawrence, along with the girl, went to the car. The guy went the other way. The protagonist noticed a note in his hand from the butler. He said that they would see each other tonight in the hotel lobby. The girl, very sad, sat down in her expensive car. She said nothing. Lawrence, during the ride, carefully observed Lady E's demeanor as she sat and continued to be silent. That evening, the butler met the guy in the hotel lobby. He gave him the pill he'd promised. He added that it was a third of what the Fen needed. The protagonist yelled at the butler to tell him if he was messing with him. Lawrence said he was just kidding. After a brief pause, the apprentice asked the butler about Miss E's condition. Absolutely calmly, Lawrence replied that the girl wasn't feeling well today. The main character got angry. He banged his hand on the table and said the butler was lying to him. The boy told the butler that he wouldn't cause the girl any trouble that couldn't serve their ultimate goal. Lawrence replied that it was all for Miss E. Butler added that sometimes stimulation therapy can be helpful. The protagonist asked with surprise to Lawrence what he meant. Butler got up and prepared to leave. He replied to the guy that it was hard to explain. Lawrence said that Lady deserves a better life, not her current one, which is marred by shame. The butler, leaving, told the guy that he would be in touch. The protagonist was silent in response. Late at night, the girl lay on the bed. She had fallen asleep and drifted into slumber. As if through a dream, the girl barely audibly whispered an apology to the invisible interlocutor. The next morning, the butler came into the girl's room with breakfast and greeted her. The lady asked Lawrence in a sleepy voice what time it was. He replied that it was 10 o'clock. The butler served coffee for the girl. He asked her how she had slept tonight. The girl, sitting on the bed and sipping her coffee, said she'd had a terrible night's sleep. The lady still kept thinking about the man who drugged the pervert. The girl put the cup on the table and asked the butler for an update. Lawrence said he had already sent a man to look into it. The girl repeated several times that she swore. The butler asked her not to worry. The protagonist returned to the hotel at the very last moment. Feng kept thinking about his recent meeting with Miss E. The guy remembered the words of the butler who said the girl deserved a better life. The protagonist recalled a conversation with the girl Lan, who called him a murderer. The boy told himself to forget the dream completely. He decided to calm down by going to his door. He noticed it was open. Fen very carefully and quietly walked to his door and began to open it slowly. The schoolboy was very much alarmed. He felt threatened. In the room, he noticed the headmistress. She told the guy he was really disgusting. The boy told the headmistress that he had no idea what was going on here. He also added that he hadn't been in the room all day. This could be confirmed by Miss E. The schoolgirl said that Tong Fei Lu's students' personal belongings were stolen. Feng is the only suspect in this room. The guy said this accusation sounds like a drama girl Fei said to let the high schooler prove it himself. The protagonist replied that there was no problem proving his innocence. Fen told everyone around him that he was completely innocent and had proof. The guy sat down beside his bag and started rummaging through it, carefully checking the contents. Looking into the bag, the guy was very shocked. He wanted to check again. Fen rummaged through his bag and found items of women's underwear. The protagonist decided to close the bag so no one would notice anything. The disciple decided to himself that this could all be a common misconception. After waiting a bit, the protagonist decided to open the bag to see if anything had changed. Fen noticed that nothing had changed, as before his bag contained women's underwear. The guy was really scared. He didn't understand why it happened, but he was ashamed. The hardest part was that there were female students standing around him and he couldn't justify himself to them. The students started accusing Fen of being a pervert. He felt as if those words were hurting him. One schoolgirl was on her mind. Faye's girlfriend yelled at the guy for being a pervert. At that time, Han Yu was walking down the corridor. She noticed a crowd of people ahead and stopped. Han Yu came closer. She was curious about what happened. She heard talk that someone had stolen Tunfei Lu's underwear. The girl noticed the main character being accused of something by a red-haired schoolgirl. The student pointed at the guy and called him a pervert. She asked how he could explain it all. Fen shouted excitedly that he wasn't a thief, and he hadn't been in the room all day. Then Han Yu noticed that someone came up from behind and asked if she needed help. The butler came over and the schoolgirls noticed him right away. Lawrence told the protagonist that he had the key to the room. The protagonist begged the butler to help him. Lawrence said nothing. After that, a group of schoolgirls along with the principal explained to the butler what had happened. After a bit of thinking, the principal said that it looked like the main character wouldn't have done it. Wei also decided that the guy couldn't have done it. Schoolgirl Fei told the guy that there's a fact that could incriminate the protagonist. The student said that the guy could have stolen the underwear anytime he wanted. Feng replied with the excuse that he didn't do it. At this time, the principal looked carefully at the bag standing on the floor in the corner. The woman leisurely walked over to the bag. All the girls looked at her intently. Feng said he is not interested in women's underwear since he washes the clothes of everyone in the family and his sister. The schoolgirl walked into the room and noticed Lan's student sitting on the bed. She asked if she was okay. The students thought about it and decided that the arguments in defense of the main character sounded reasonable. The Fei girl shouted, wondering who could be a thief then. The principal went to her bag, found some small gold jewelry on the floor. After a little thought, the woman told the students to stop fighting. The principal said confidently that the protagonist is innocent, but she knows who the thief is. The schoolgirls demanded that the woman answer them. The principal refused to speak. The woman said she would handle everything herself and told the students to go back to their rooms. After a short pause, the principal told the protagonist to go with her now. The principal, together with the fellow, went out on the terrace of the hotel. He addressed the woman. After a brief pause, the principal decided to turn to the student. He was all ears. The woman calmly explained to the guy that it was about her daughter. The guy asked her, very surprised, what she wanted about her daughter. The woman said slowly and judiciously that her daughter was the president of the student council. The schoolboy hesitated as he remembered what the head of the school board looked like. Feng thought to himself that the principal and her daughter looked absolutely nothing alike. The woman reported that she found her daughter's jewelry in the guy's room next to her bag. Feng asked why the principal's daughter always makes guys suffer. After that, the woman thought for a moment. She said it was a long story that she and the girl's father had started. The principal said that the girl's father was rarely at home because of his work. When Linya was still young, he had to leave. In the end, the girl Linya thinks that her father has done a very bad thing to her family. She thinks he's a terrible man. The protagonist listened to the woman's story with surprise. She decided to continue the story. A girl named Linya became very ambitious and became president of the student council. At one point, a journal with records came to her, and she found out why the school was closed. After that, Linya hated boys, and the past enrollment of boys in the school exacerbated the situation. The principal grabbed the guy's arm. She wanted to voice her request to him. The woman asked the guy persuasively to help her with her daughter. The guy excitedly told the woman not to have any more handshakes. Fen couldn't understand why he would interfere in such a murky school history. The principal cheerfully told Fen that he would definitely make it. The student replied fearfully that he did not deserve the principal's trust. He thought her assignment was terrible. At this time, a schoolgirl was watching very closely as the main character interacted with a woman. A student yelled to the school board supervisor that she was already back. She asked why the girl was sitting naked. The girl asked the student if she had learned anything interesting and wanted to tell her about the main character. The girl said that her mother was ruining her plan because she often talks to Fen. The head of the school board said she needed to come up with a better plan. The girlfriend reminded the girl to get dressed. There was a meeting of the 4 devil girls in the room. One of them urged her friends to stop their nonsense. The schoolgirl with purple hair said that the main character proved that he was a good guy. Han Yu's girlfriend told the other girls at school to stop bullying the guy. After a little thought, the schoolgirl Wei said judiciously that it was true. Another student with red hair confirmed that it was time for them to stop. Schoolgirl Fei stood silent and didn't say anything. She looked at her friend Han Yu. Suddenly, the door opened and the principal and the main character entered the room silently. The student told the guy that he looked bad and asked what was wrong. Feng replied that he had listened to a lot of things. The woman looked at the schoolgirls and said she had something to tell them. The principal looked at the student and the rest of the schoolgirls with great attention. The woman told the students that although it would be an inconvenience, they should switch rooms. Fen Yu liked that suggestion. At this time, student Faye decided to ask her girlfriend Hanyu a question. Faye told her girlfriend that she was very close to the main character. After that, Faye asked the Hanyu girl what she thought of the guy. The student said that the main character is very special. Although he was prejudiced at first, Feng has shown himself to be a real gentleman who is always ready to help people. At this moment, Hanyu felt very embarrassed. She could not understand why she was saying such words. After that, the schoolgirl Faye hesitated. She asked her friend if she was really sure of what she was saying. The main character at this time was lying on the bed and resting. He got a lot of information. At this time, the Nangong girl was sitting next to the cards and practicing divination. After the cards were dealt, the student noticed that she had an unlucky sign. The protagonist abruptly got off the bed and asked the Nangong girl if he could count on her help. The schoolgirl proudly replied to the guy that her predictions always come true. The student took the card and wanted to let the student know what her last prediction said. Looking carefully at the map, Nangong informed the guy that his life was in danger. The protagonist reflected to himself that he remained calm even after such terrible news. Feng realized that he could count on the schoolgirl to help him. He bowed to her and asked her to help him. Nangong told the guy in a judicious voice that it was hard for him to refuse. The girl handed the guy a small pouch with great tips inside. The apprentice reminded the Fen to use the pouch only when absolutely necessary. The protagonist was very happy. He thought himself very lucky. The girl promised that she would pray for him. In spite of everything, the situation only became more complicated. The main character did not even realize how much. On the 5th day of the trip, the Nangong girl was resting in her room. Feng went to the restroom and decided to try a pill. The student decided confidently to himself that schoolgirl Nangong couldn't be wrong. Taking the pill had a stunning effect on the protagonist from head to toe. Then Feng collapsed on the floor. At this time, the Nangong girl woke up. The schoolgirl got up and started walking down the hall. She walked over to the restroom and looked inside. The girl noticed the main character. He greeted her. The schoolgirl asked Fen how he was doing. The guy told the girl that he was going to go get breakfast and asked if he needed to bring anything. Nangong said she didn't need anything and went down the stairs. The people around him looked at Fen and couldn't understand what had happened to him. He seemed to be walking and glowing. The student went to the store and bought a bag of food. He decided to take a walk. A boy was walking down the street and people were looking at him. The student wondered what he should do tomorrow. Passing by Chu Dao's swimsuit store, the guy noticed that there were 3 devil girls standing nearby. Suddenly, a schoolgirl named Faye caught his eye. He didn't realize what he had done. After that, Faye walked confidently up to the main character and pinned him against the wall. The schoolgirl looked at the student carefully and said that she apologized for yesterday and asked the boy to be a good boy tomorrow. Feng was very surprised by the student's behavior. After that, Faye turned around and stepped aside from the protagonist. The guy breathed a sigh of relief. Fen thought about it. He didn't realize there were any events in town tomorrow. Looking carefully at the announcement, the schoolboy realized that there will be a beauty contest. Miss Chun Nan. The protagonist decided that he couldn't miss such an event. He remembered that the pill he had taken had energized him. Suddenly the guy heard someone calling him. He turned around and saw the butler. Fen was overjoyed and full of positive emotions, ran up to Lawrence. The guy hugged the butler and said he made him feel alive again. Lawrence told the guy that the lady demanded of him that he take part in a beauty contest tomorrow. The protagonist was very surprised. The main character was standing outside the store chatting with Lawrence the butler. Feng told the butler that the mistress must be joking about him entering the contest. The butler replied to the lad that ladies are always serious about their plans, and this is without exception. There was a long pause as the protagonist and the butler looked at each other long and silently. The guy flatly refused to comply with Lady E's request. He waved his hand away. In a serious voice, the butler asked the boy if he really wanted to disappoint the mistress. After thinking for a bit, Feng replied that he didn't want to play Lady E's stupid games. Lawrence patted the boy and praised him for having the courage to refuse his mistress. The butler smiled at the boy and asked him in a sly voice if he had taken a pill this morning. Feng confirmed that he had. Lawrence said the pill is part of the therapy. The boy is required to take a stabilizer in the next 3 days. The student got very agitated. Butler added that the stabilizer would be the prize for tomorrow's beauty contest. Fen said thoughtfully that few people would be interested in some kind of stabilizer. Butler explained that only the title was of interest to the participating girls. The reward in the competition will be 1 million yuan, and also rewarded will be the right to create their own new school rule. The protagonist was overjoyed. He thought he had been saved and would have a chance to return to his normal school life. Fen agreed to participate. Butler liked the boy's answer. The protagonist had another question. A student asked Lawrence how a guy would be able to compete in a female beauty pageant. Lawrence calmly replied that it would be no problem for him as butler. After that, the butler slowly walked towards the guy who was very frightened, startled. The protagonist backed up against the wall and shouted at Lawrence to stay back. Fung screamed really hard. He was afraid of what the butler wanted to do to him. In the International Convention Center, there was a beauty contest. There were many contestants and spectators. Butler Lawrence appeared with his mistress. The principal of the girls' school came with her students. The students looked at the schoolgirls with admiration. A guy told a friend that he would love to go back to school if these beauties were his classmates. Suddenly, a beautiful girl walked past them. The guys looked after the girl with purple hair and felt it was love. The butler escorted his mistress to the VIP box. He helped her into her chair. Lady E sat silent, and the school board president sat next to her. The lady turned to the butler with a question, and he immediately answered the lady. The girl asked the butler if everything was ready for the pageant. Lawrence confirmed that everything was ready. At that time in the locker room, the girls were preparing for a beauty contest. A friend told Weiwei, a schoolgirl, that she was so hot that she could burn herself. Suddenly, the red-haired schoolgirl looked to the side and saw the girl Fei there. The student wondered to herself what the Tong Fei girl was thinking about while standing silently near the wall. Contestant Fei was completely focused. She had set herself up that she should take first place. The girl Fei decided that she had to win to be able to create new school rules. She wanted to ban guys from joining their school. A friend asked Weiwei, a high school student, why she decided to enter this contest. Apprentice Wei thoughtfully replied that she was participating because of the award. She would use it to decorate her family bar. Afterwards, Wei asked her friend why she was participating in the contest. The red-haired schoolgirl said that she just wanted to have fun. At this time, a female student, Nangong, was sitting in the locker room distractedly playing computer games. At this time, Nangong noticed Han Yu girl walked into the locker room. She stared at her intently. Han Yu shyly asked the girl not to look at her. Nangong replied to her friend that she was cute. Even more embarrassed, Han Yu shouted to her friend not to mock her. Afterward, Han Yu asked her girlfriend why she was participating. Nangong briefly said it was a secret. Han Yu told the schoolgirl that it was time to get ready. The hostess welcomed the guests and said that today there was a competition for the girls from Chungnan School. At this time, Lady E and the head of the school board were sitting in silence. The host said that it was time to welcome the contestants. The host announced the names and parameters of the contestants. They were Tongfei Lu, Weiwei Tong, and with them also Moya Zhao. After that, the host introduced the contestants Han Yu Di and the girl Lan Qing. The main character was very surprised to see his acquaintance Lan. At the end, participant Nangong was introduced. The presenter named her parameters. All the spectators were in great and wild excitement. They were greatly aroused. Someone in the audience was looking at a challenger named Naisiang Sundao on a smartphone. A group of armed guys hid behind the stage and waited for the last contestant. The presenter announced the appearance of a participant named Siati Muyu. The girls were surprised. They didn't remember such a classmate, and at the same time, armed guys were coming to the stage.